Hello everyone, welcome to the first lecture of 5th week of Scalable Data Mining course. In today's lecture, we are going to discuss Bloom filters. Okay, so we have been discussing the stream processing algorithms. Okay, stream processing algorithms, and we have seen what is the streaming model of data processing, where data arrives in a stream and then we have to do some processing uh, on this stream without storing the entire data or without even looking back at the entire data. We can only store a small fraction of uh, the statistics of the data that we get. So if you have seen uh, n many data points, the restriction is that you cannot store uh, theta of n many parameters. Okay, so you have to always store something like big O, small o of n many parameters, which is much less than n. Okay, now in this setting we have seen we have already seen the sampling algorithm, which is called the reservoir sampling, which maintains uniform random sample of size, let's say k, of the stream. Okay, so today we are going to see another problem, which is the problem of querying a stream. So what is the problem of querying a stream? Okay, so suppose you have a set of elements, let's say s1 till sn, okay, coming in the stream. Okay, you are the problem of querying is that you are given element s, okay, and you have to answer whether you have seen this element s in the stream till now or not. Okay, so at any point in time you may be asked this query that have you seen, so you will be provided with an element s, okay, and you will be asked the question, have you seen this element s in the stream or not? Okay, so what are some of the applications? So for example, one of the applications could be, let's say that you are searching a list of books, okay, for whether a particular book is available or not. Okay, so you may so this really is you can think of searching any library. Okay, and uh, so here I have given the example of books, but you can pretty much think about any querying anything. You can think about querying videos, you can think about querying movies, anything really. And the point here is that you are making one pass through the entire stream, okay, and uh, then the stream is gone. Okay, so for example, you can think that a particular library has given you access to its entire e-archive collection, but with the restriction that you can only make one pass through the entire list of books, and after that the access will be gone. Okay, in such setting you need to build a system which will basically query this database of books. Okay, and then at the runtime, okay, when the user asks whether a particular book is present or not, you should be able to tell whether that book is present in the library or not. Okay, and consider another setting, okay, where you are writing software for a switch. Okay, now this switch is kind of a smart switch. Okay, so the switch may be so the primary job of the switch is to forward. So whenever it gets it has many ports, and whenever it gets packet with a certain destination IP address from one of the ports, okay, it has a routing table, and it tries to forward it to the best possible next hop through one of the ports, right? So it just forwards this IP address, but it has seen the IP address. Okay, now the switch may be doing some smart analytics, like and this so this switch may be connected to a server which is doing some smart analytics, and now the server may query the switch saying, have you seen this particular IP address? So it wants to do some kind of analytics on the IP addresses. Maybe it is trying to prevent denial of service attack. Okay, so are there many queries coming for a particular IP or a particular set of IPs or some such thing? Okay, so it is basically asking whether this has been seen or not. Okay, and the switch needs to answer this query. Now, the switch cannot store uh, the entire stream. So this is again happening in a streaming manner. So IP addresses are constantly coming and going. Okay, and at any point of time you may be asked, okay, this question. So how do you answer this question? So these are some of the querying problems. Okay, or some of the applications of the querying problem in the stream processing model. Okay. Okay, so now the question is, what are the some of the naive solutions, or some of the exact solutions? Okay, so yeah, so let us look at some of the exact solutions. So before we look at the solutions, just let me clear out some of the things. So we will let us call U as the size of the universe. So universe is the set of all elements. Set of all elements. Okay. Again, we can use elements, items, etc., etc. They are all meaning the same. Okay, and U is the set of all of them. So for example, in case of switch, the set of all elements are going to be set of all IP addresses. Okay. Uh, yeah. Uh, okay. Now you, in most cases, uh, you will only need to store an in set of n items. Okay, so rather I would say not store a set of n items, but you have seen a set of n items. Okay, and this n is going to be much less than the size of the universe. Okay, so any particular switch will not see many IP addresses, because those IP addresses don't even fall in the routing path of that switch. Okay, so n is the set of items that you actually see, and this is typically much large, much smaller than the size of the universe. Okay, now what is the first solution? So first exact solution is that you create a hash table of size m. So you have a memory of size m, you create a hash table of size m. Okay, and so you basically have a hashing function h. Okay, whenever a new item comes, so let's call this item x or something. Okay, so whenever a new item comes, you hash it, um, you hash it to one of the m slots in the hash table. Okay, so you have slots 1 to m, and you hash it to one of the m slots in the hash table, and then uh, at the query time, okay, when a new item comes, okay, so let's call this x hat or something, okay, or rather you store the so you store basically the element here, okay, so you stored the element x here, okay. Now multiple elements could be stored here, and so you basically multiple elements could be hashed to the same bucket, so you store uh, these things, okay. uh, okay, so so how much space does this scheme take, okay. uh, so the space requirement for this scheme is going to be n log u, okay. So log u is the size of representation of an element. So you know that if you have a universe of elements u, okay, the size of that is mod of u, so you can store it in space which is logarithmic in u, okay. Okay. And you have actually seen n items, okay, which needs to be stored here, okay. So you need to store, you need n log u space, okay. So this is your space, okay. Now at the query time you need big O of n by m time, okay. So as your n increases, so the reason you need n by m time is because the length of this list in the hash table is going to be n by n, and you can see this because you have seen n items, okay, and you have m buckets, and if you assume that your hashing function randomly puts every item randomly into one of the buckets, okay, then it will basically put uh, n by m items in each of these buckets, and so you need to, in the worst case, search for over all these n by m items to actually answer the query, okay. So so this is the query time, okay. Now you see that both are basically linear in n, okay. So as your n increases or the number of items that you see increases, uh, you know your both space and query time increases, okay. Another solution can be that you use a bit array of size u. Now this is an extreme solution, okay. uh, this is probably a more practical solution, okay. This is an extreme solution because in most applications this size of u is really large, okay. So if you have to allocate space which is linear in u, this is a very bad idea, okay. The good thing is that the space or the query complexity of this does not increase with n, or does not even depend on n, okay. But you incur a very heavy space penalty, okay. So now these are some of the exact solutions, okay. Now suppose you don't want exact solutions, okay. So so just to be clear about the exact solutions, okay. So the solution, so if the solutions that we have discussed, okay, they will never return a wrong answer, okay. So if the item is there in the list, it will return that it is there, okay. If the item is not there in the string, it will return that it is not there, okay. So it will always return the correct answer. But for example, your hashing algorithm is a randomized algorithm. It depends on the random hash function, right? So the query time may depend on what kind of hashing function you are using. So query time is a random variable, okay, but you will always return the correct answer. Okay, so such kind of randomized algorithms are also called Las Vegas algorithms. Okay, now there is another class of randomized algorithms which are called Monte Carlo algorithms. Okay, in Monte Carlo algorithms, we are allowed to return incorrect answers with a small probability. Okay, so sometimes we are allowed to return incorrect answers. Okay, we will see in what applications this may happen. Okay, so in many applications we may be allowed to return incorrect answers. Okay, now let me design. So Bloom filter is one such algorithm for the querying problem that we have been discussing. Okay, uh, so what is the Bloom filter algorithm? Okay, so before understanding what is the Bloom filter algorithm, let me tell you that the Bloom filter is one algorithm which may return false positives, okay, but it will never return false negatives. So what do we mean by this? So this is first of all a Monte Carlo algorithm, okay, it's a Monte Carlo algorithm, that is it will return some wrong answers. Okay, now there are two cases. Okay, one case is that, and so you have a string here, yes, an element s is there in the so consider an element s dashed which is not there in the string. Okay, what Bloom filter will do is it may return with a small probability that s dashed is present in the string, but if an element s is present in the string, it will never return that element s is not present. So it will return only false positives. Okay, so it will not return any false negatives. Okay, s dashed is a false positive. Okay, so how does it operate? Okay, so what you do is you take, let's say, a bit array of size m. Okay, so it is kind of, you can say, the a mixture of the hashing algorithm and the bit array algorithm we discussed in the previous thing. Okay, now additionally it takes k hashing functions. Okay, so each hashing function, it takes an element from the universe U and assigns one of the indices from 1 to n. Okay, so this notation is that uh, it basically maps each item in the string to an index between 1 to n. Okay, so for each item you basically get k indices. Okay, so in this case, let's say there are 3 hashing functions, so for each item you get 3 indices. Okay, these 3 indices point to 3 particular cells in this bit array. Okay, so while inserting something, okay, so initially all these cells are 0. Now while inserting something, you just make these cells 1. Okay, so that is the idea. Okay, now at the time of, so this is the insert. Okay, so you initialize all the buckets in this hash table or all the bits to 0. Okay, whenever an item is inserted in this hash table, you make all the k bits 1 where this particular element is hashed. Okay, two of them could be hashed to also the same index. Okay, but you make all of them 1. Okay, now at the time of lookup, okay, So you are supplied with another element x, which may or may not be present in the hash table. So what you do is you compute again all the hash indices for this particular element x. Okay, you see the values of the corresponding bits. Okay, and you take an AND over all these bits. So this is an ANDing over the bits. Okay, and if this is true, then you return present, otherwise you return absent. In other words, if all the indices where this new element is hashed to are turned to 1, okay, then you return present, otherwise you return absent. Okay, so this is the algorithm. Now let us see what the algorithm is doing. Okay, so first of all, let us look at the claim that if an element x has previously been seen in the stream and it has been added to the Bloom filter, okay, then at the lookup stage, suppose I supply the same element x, okay, it will always return present. Okay, so 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 this part is clear. And why is this the case? This is the case because uh, we have already inserted this element, okay, and we have set all the bits where this particular element is hashed to 1. So at the time of lookup, and there is nothing which flips back an element from 1 to 0. Okay, so once an element is set to 1, it will always remain at 1. Okay, so if this is the case, at the lookup time you will always see return present. Okay, so this is the first part of the thing. Okay, now suppose if an element is not added to the filter before, okay, sometimes it may still return present. So how can this happen? Okay, so suppose you have entered two different elements, okay, x and y. Okay, and this x has turned on these three, so each of them is turning on some of the things. Okay, this element has turned on these three bits, and this y element has turned on these three bits. Okay, if this is the case, now suppose you are calling lookup using another element q, which queries these bits. Okay, so let me call this bit, this bit, and this bit. Okay, now all of these bits have been turned on by some element, either x or y, not necessarily the same element, but some element which has turned on the respective bit. Okay, in that case, this q will be a false positive. Okay, this q will be returned as present. Okay, if any of these, if q, so all the k things that you are hashing to, if any one of them falls in the uh, 0 region, okay, then it will not be a false positive. But if all of them go to the previously bits which have been previously made 1, okay, then it will return a false positive. Okay, so this is the operating of a Bloom filter. Okay, now, so what is the challenge here? Okay, so the challenge here is that we want to design a Bloom filter such that we minimize the probability of false positive. Okay, so what do we mean by designing a Bloom filter? Okay, so a Bloom filter will have two sets of parameters. Okay, one is the number of bits, right? So m is the number of bits and k is the number of hash functions. So once you have these, okay, you have a Bloom filter, because your hash function is basically, you can choose it from a family of hash function which uniformly hashes an element to one of the n buckets, and there are many ways. Okay, so there are many ways of choosing this. Uh, the simplest way is that if your elements are some vectors, you can just calculate a linear or any function of that vector actually. Okay, and then you can just any integer function rather of that vector. Okay, so and then you can just do modulo m. Okay, so you can just take modulo m. So you can just take some function which is g of x mod m. Okay, where g of x is integer function. Okay, this is one hash function. There can be many ways of designing such a hash function. Okay, but the important thing here is that the hash function should actually uh, be such that it should have you so the probability of an element being mapped to any one of the m buckets is equal. Okay, so if there are m buckets, so for each of the m buckets, the hash function should map an element x with probability 1 by n. So this is our assumption. Okay, so if if we choose k is equal to 1, okay, so m is not really so much in your hand, it is more of a system parameter, that how much memory do you have available. The larger the memory you have, the better it is. Okay, on the other hand, k is something that you can design. Okay, so take the simple case that suppose you choose k is equal to 1. Okay, then it is it is something like a bit array. Okay, it is something like a bit array, and except that you don't, so it's a bit array with collisions. Okay, so bit array with collisions.